How's it going, everybody? Good night, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're deciding to tune in. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Want to get an early shout out to Sean Wiley. It says, "Yo, what's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in." And then he also said, "Yo, what's up, everyone?" So thanks for tuning in. Um, it's just gonna be me right now, and honestly, I'm not gonna be expecting to stay too much long because I've had some difficulty with my internet as of recently. So just in case of if you need a comparison of how bad it was, um, that Monday night game with the whole monsoon and everything, yeah, it was also kind of where I was at right now too. And it got so bad I saw like a news report that said that it was the worst that it's been since 1880. So I think that's got to say something for how bad my internet was at that point. But it's looking okay now. I haven't had too many problems right now. So we're up and running, and yeah, we'll see where our conversations lead us. Getting some more people in the chat. How you doing, everybody? So like I said, Daivon's not going to be joining us. But if you do want to hear his recap, I highly, highly, highly suggest you go over to his YouTube channel. It's called Speak Up. But you might want to type in Speak Up Falcons. He should be like the first result that comes up. And then he's done a couple of recaps so far. I know he put up one last night. I really want to see him have more subscribers there. For whatever reason, I don't know if it's like a YouTube thing, but his videos are more showing up in like the YouTube Kids section. I don't know what's going up with that. How's it going, SGT Thomas? Braves might lose. Oh, no. Well, we'll see what happens with that one. Brandon Kahuna, how you doing? Let's see here. Okay. So we are still going to carry the same format that we've had in the past couple of weeks. I'm just going to have to shorten it. I don't know if I want to ask my questions. I asked him if he was okay with me asking his questions for me to answer on the stream without him. I hope you followed up with that. I hope you followed with that sentence. But yeah, I have his 3 questions. I don't know if I'm going to dig into mine, but yeah, we can continue on with the review of the Panthers. If you haven't already watched Twisted Torches, I was actually like just watching his before I hopped onto this. So I think we have enough people right now. I'm going to ask the first question that he gave me. All right, and the first question was, should Matt Ryan be considered for the front runner for MVP for the MVP conversation if he continues to play like this and if the Falcons make the playoffs? Brandon, you are too. I don't know what I don't know what that means in context. But yeah, that was the question that they gave me so far. So my way, all right, I should take it. I'm going to get to that in just a second. But his first question that he asked me was that, like, hey, do you think Matt Ryan could be in consideration for the MVP? And my same answer is going to be, well, what week is it? It's only just approaching week 8. And, oh, okay, yeah, you were watching his before. Okay, that's what you're saying. All right, good to know. But yeah, like, it's still too early to figure that out just yet. Like, think back to last year. Derek Carr and the Raiders, they were on a tear. And then they faced us. And then they faced a couple of other players. Or a couple of other teams. And then it wasn't looking so good after that. So I'm just saying, like, there's always a chance for a team to surprise you, and then there's always a chance for a team to just deflate. It's really early to tell. How's it going, Cartier? Thumbs up to you, my man. All right. So yeah, it's a little bit too early to say something like that. Do I think that he deserves it? I think he deserves to be in consideration. I mean, for those of us that have been watching Matt Ryan for so long, we can kind of understand that this is the standard that he's been putting up for the past couple of years, with or without a successful core around him, especially a defense. But now that we have that kind of hope around the team, we have a hope around a city too, which I think is even more important. So it's like we're gonna start showing up, all right, because every single city, or like this whole city, like every single sport in it, has always had like some sort of a sluggish start, and then they just got on a tear, all right, and they surprised everyone. Hawks, they were the same thing, kind of got a sluggish start, then they went on a tear. Atlanta United got on a sluggish start, now they got on a tear. The Braves, they got a sluggish start, now they're in the World Series. We got a sluggish start, so that's all I'm saying. Are you saying Panthers oversell the team? This is a must-win for both teams. I do agree that it's a must-win for both teams. It's a really good litmus test right now because, like, our offense versus the Panthers' defense, that's a good test. And then especially their offense versus our defense. Like, we need to make a bad team look bad. You know? Like, if the Giants can do it, how's it going, Antonio? Like, if the Giants can make the Panthers look bad to the point where they bench Sam Darnold, I don't see how that can't happen with us, too. That's all I'm saying. All right? We can score just as many points as the Giants, but how does our team stack up against the Panthers? Like, that's the most important thing because each team is built different. All right? So some teams can have a better matchup and a more specific spot that they can target that can really exploit that versus, oh, hey, I'm just going to do this and because it's on paper, we're going to have the better team. That's not always the case. Because defense has too many holes on all levels. Like, there are certain facets of our defense that are playing well. Obviously, Deion Jones, who's got the defensive player of the week. We've seen the production that A.J. Terrell has refused to let the wide receivers have when throwing to his side of man coverage. Grady is Grady. Like, there's no need to really rip on him. So, Jalen Hawkins has been playing fantastic in his last couple of starts. Like, we have a good nucleus to keep building around, and that's only going to continue to grow as they get more familiar with the system that they're playing in. How's it going, Floyd? RDA says, once you get benched, no coming back. That's once in 5 years of mishaps. Oh, well, I mean, I don't want to talk anything about the Aints right now. That's not going to be till the next week. All right. It really should. I mean, to rate our team, like I said, we need to be able to make a bad team look bad against us. That's what the good teams do. Right? Cartier's here. He should know about what a good team looks like against a bad team because he just saw that with the Bucs playing the Bears. I mean, good God, nothing worked for them. That was the most embarrassing loss I've seen in a long time if you're a Bears fan. All right? How's it going, Marcus Bell? Tony Wright, how you doing, man? Exactly, you're spot on. Well, thank you for agreeing with me. We need to make a bad team look bad. So Kyle Pitts, Calvin Ridley, Cordell Patterson each put up 100 yards receiving. Oh, that's production. That's execution. And that's possible, too. All right? We can run the ball well. We win. Simple formula, but that's what the Panthers have been trying to stop. They've been really good at stopping other teams, especially in the run game. Like, obviously, it wasn't all that successful against the Cowboys. And, yeah, the Giants didn't even have Saquon, and that still looked good for them in terms of their efficiency there. That being said, we don't have to do a whole lot in order to make our running game look good against them. So that's just something to keep in mind. Like with everyone kind of ripping on Mike Davis, like the only reason as to why that's been the case for him is because they run a lot on first down. Like they're like we as the Falcons offense, we're trying to be a run first team, but we're doing so to the point where it's too predictable. And we've seen like once we backed out of it and we just started like, hey, let's just throw to Kyle Pitts, why don't we? Then you saw like the longer drives. Then you saw us pushing the ball downfield more. And it's like, come on, like we need to see we need to see a little bit more of that. Do you agree? So everyone's taking Kyle Pitts. Fantastic. I think he's raised his ceiling on how good he can get because this is his 7th professional game, and he's playing a position that generally doesn't get a whole lot of production out of him. All right, like Jamar Chase has been fantastic, right? But we've seen that kind of production from a wide receiver before, like Justin Jefferson last year, like Randy Moss back in '98. So it's like the wide receivers, they have a better chance in order to explode out the gate like this as long as they have a system that allows them to be on the field. Because some coaches, they're really like anti-rookie, like in the first couple of games. It's really those coaches that have like the shorter leash that are like, hey, let's just get the rookie production right now and just see what happens. Like Zach Taylor, like he didn't have that long of a leash by the end of the Bengals season last year. So that's why you're seeing a lot of Jamar Chase right now because like, hey, like this is going to keep his job if it works all that well. Or is is a lith? Is that how you say it? And then like comma, period, comma. Okay. What worries me is a secondary though. Like we have a decent matchup with their wide receiving core. I know that they can be explosive at times, but look at who's throwing to them. Are you really going to be afraid of that? Corey's already predicting a good, decent win by 14 points. Floyd agrees with that. Already says, where are all the fake Falcons fans that wanted Justin Fields? Holy Toledo, 5 turnovers. Gosh. All right. I mean, I mentioned a couple weeks ago that they're going to treat him as if he's a black Mitch Trubisky. Turns out that was an insult to Mitch Trubisky. Now, again, that's not to say that he's been put in a better spot or that as an equal spot because the Bears, like last year, they took a look at their front office. They had like 8 days in order to look at like, hey, like what's going on. Then like Black Monday came from at the end of last year, and they were like, I think in order for us to get better, we're going to do the exact same thing. That's not how running a team works. All right. If you're the same, you get worse. All right. You always got to get better. You can't plateau in this league because everyone's going to get better without you, and they're not going to care if you progress or not. All right. Tony Ryan says the Giants are a good football team, though. Their win record hasn't really shown that in the last 5 years. But I digress. In spite of the record, they have some good talented players on offense and defense. They just got to know what to do with them. All right, like, is it the scheme? Not really. I mean, it's a mixed bag of problems. But with a mixed bag of problems comes a mixed bag of solutions, too. And it's like, how can you apply them? You know? So, does everyone feel like we still should have taken Justin Fields instead of Kyle Pitts? Because I don't want Kyle. Because I don't. Pitts is a generational talent. Yeah. Like, you look at the layout of our team, not just from a roster standpoint, but from a salary cap standpoint, we wouldn't have been able to afford one anyways. All right? Like, a quarterback at 4, regardless of who he was going to take a lot of money. Money that we didn't have in order to give him. So it's kind of good that we had to take someone like Kyle Pitts. Like, that's a good problem to have. It's like, oh, man, like, Did you really settle on Kyle Pitts? You can't say that. I see Smith hates all the teams in the NFC South except for the Meerkat. Yeah, there's still always a bit of a bias when it comes to some of these players that go into the broadcast booth or like the post game shows. Phil Kyle Pitts is the next Julio. He plays just like him to me, and that's the thing. Like he's lined up in more positions than Julio ever was. Like, that's the crazy thing to think about. Like, you can mismatch him even more so than you could with Julio. Because I get that, yeah, Julio was like an inside guy or an outside guy that occasionally played inside. But you can put Kyle Pitts on his actual position, and he can still get really good matchups there. Like we saw with his first touchdown. Like, they lined up John Franklin Myers, their defensive tackle that just got an extension like the day before or whatever, and they lined him up against Kyle Pitts running a corner route in the end zone. I'm sorry. I'm taking that opportunity every single time. All right, so there are more ways in order to get a mismatch and create separation. But, yeah, like the fact that he's able to get separation and make himself look open against a corner like Xavier Howard, that speaks a lot. Flint, how you doing? Says, I think the Falcons should sign a veteran corner because Chris Williamson backing up now that Oliver is injured isn't the answer. He can't cover for anything, and TJ Green wasn't the answer either. Yeah, I mean, we've seen, like, Dean Pease has been in this situation before, too. Like, Dean Pease has been in this situation before, too. Like back in the 2012 season where they won the Super Bowl, they had to deal with 8 different cornerbacks. You best believe that those final 2 or 3 guys on the roster couldn't cover as well as the top 3. So you had to adapt to the scheme. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing. Like, with Chris Williamson and everything else, like, I can kind of give them a pass because they're rookies, right? They're undrafted free agents. Like, they're basically expendables. So if they don't do any good, well, we didn't really spend a whole lot of cap on them. But the fact that they are trying to do good, well, that speaks really well about our scouting team. Thanks to Terry Fontenot. So we look at our secondary, and we can see more production. Like, we can see more safeties on the field, if anything. Because the safety position requires you to be really instinctive and also smart because you have to be, well, the last line of defense. And if you're a corner, kind of out on an island, against your matchup, you are the last line of defense most likely. So I think if you start to put more safeties out there, now let's be honest, like, you need to match them up kind of like by height or like by skill position. Because when I saw Richie Grant covering Mike Gesicki last game, I was like, no wonder why Tua threw to them. It's like you had like a 5'11" corner against like a 6'5" tight end. That was like Brent Grimes covering up Jimmy Graham. I was like, that's just, I'm sorry, but that's something that we've seen before. And no matter how good a corner can be, they're just not tall enough. So, Tony Wright, I wish the Falcons had Leonard Williams lining up next to Grady Jarrett and rookie Azeez Ojulari. I picked in June to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, and he's got 7.5 sacks in 7 games so far. Whew, man. I call him Azeez Ojulari. Like, geez, that is really fantastic production. But, yeah, like, every team's going to have good players. The fact that they got them, what was it, like the start of the second round or something? But, yeah, I mean, but let's not discount the people that we have on our team, too. We're still giving guys like Jacob Tuiota Mariner. Oh, we should give them a little bit more of a chance. AO should be doing better. Someone that I really gave praises to was Jonathan Bullard. All right, like, I've seen him. Like, he hasn't had a whole lot of stats to his name, but I can tell that he's there to stop a play and that he's in a position to disrupt and obstruct the path of the play. All right, like, you take a look back at that Tua interception where Foye was the receptor of it. Who was right in front of Tua? Well, that was Jonathan Bullard. So it's like I can kind of see those kind of matchups where it's not necessarily like the sack total, but it's more so like how can you affect the play? So thinking of it that way, yeah, well, Azeez Ojulari is having a lot of sacks so far. I'm just saying, like, there's not a whole lot of other bright spots elsewhere if you're not doing everything else. You think Calvin picks up this game or pick up his game up this? Wait, what? Too many ups, man. But yeah, we'll see how the game script goes. Something that Arthur Smith has mentioned in his press conferences is that he doesn't care for the fantasy guys. He's like, hey, if we're gonna win with one person, we're gonna win with them. But if it takes a community, we're gonna win with a community. So it's not just a matter of like, oh, hey, can one player save us on this game? It's can our offense function as a group rather than a player or a duo. So as much as I expect Calvin to like have more production in terms of like total catches and targets, I can't guarantee it, but we'll see how the game goes. Like, I trust his talent, if that's what you're asking for. Like, that's really never been an issue. Like, getting the ball in his hands. It's everything that he does afterwards that kind of like scares me. Like, Isabel, can we see more of Means, or can we see less of Means and more of JTM or Walker? I think down the road, like, that has definitely been Means' position to lose. And I don't know what he's done, like, off the field in order to keep that job. But, oh boy. And it makes decisions, we have a decision to make after the season. We're getting players signed, like i.e. Foye. Yeah, I mean, this upcoming offseason is going to be very interesting to see how Terry Fontenot handles it. Because it's not like we're given a whole lot more money. Like, there's supposed to be like some sort of a TV deal. But I think that's like the year after this one. But, yeah, like, until we see that spike in everyone's money to just come up for these rosters, there's not a whole lot of turnaround you can do, especially when you still have like so much dead money in the books. Hey, Cartier, our fellow rival, is saying the Falcons are going to make the playoffs. We might sneak in as the 7th seed. Like a lot of the playoff pictures are having us like on the top of the hunt race, and I think the Vikings had their bye this week, so they are the team in front of us at the 7th spot. And I'm seeing a lot of these other positions, like a lot of these other teams, they don't have the hope that we do. Like we already talked about the Bears, like they don't have a hope. I take a look at some other teams like the Seahawks. Like, sure, like maybe down the future, but this season they don't have hope. Like by the time that Russell Wilson comes back from his injury, it's going to be too late because they just can't put enough points on the board, regardless of the talent on the outside. So I look at games like that and be like, oh, well, I mean, you have DK Metcalf. Like, why don't you just throw to him all the time? Well, when it's that simple, it's also that simple for the defense to stop too. So you got to be able to change it up. And Chris Carson has been banged up. So you're really leaving the game on the hands of your quarterback. And if that quarterback changes from anything other than a guy like Russell Wilson, yeah, you're in trouble. So that's why the Monday night game was so boring like that. You're right, saying there's never going to be another Julio Jones. Kyle Pitts is the next Kyle Pitts. Well, Kyle Pitts is kind of like the first of his kind, if that's what you're asking for. Like, you might say Darren Waller, but Darren Waller was a convert from wide receiver to tight end. That's why he's had a little bit more success, because he's had the time spent like practicing on the outside a little bit more. Whereas Thomas says, do y'all think we can do anything with the trade deadline approaching? Oh, man. Okay, so my question to you is, what would you want the Falcons to focus on as far as a position to upgrade? Like, choose one, and then we'll kind of carry the conversation from there. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did see that, and I don't know why. Probably just for Alvin Kamara to feel better, because he's literally been that entire offense. Like 179 scrimmage yards and 13 points to show for it against the Seahawks defense that hasn't been all that consistent. It is so hard. Like, the Saints are the hardest team to gauge so far. That's what I'm starting to notice. It's like, just when you think that they're like not going to be good enough, they like play down to their opponent, or they play well beyond their opponent, but they can't really like follow it up. So, I mean, if anything, we're hoping that they can have like a fantastic game so that they can just like lay an egg against us, you know, like something like that. Obviously, I want them to lose every single game, but that's out of my hands. So Will says that we need our defense to step up, because after this game, we have New Orleans and Dallas. Like, Dallas is the game that I'm really like. That's going to be the litmus test for our entire team, not necessarily just our offense or defense. So, like, because Dallas's offense, they are leading the league in average yards per play. So, talk about consistent offense. And the rest is, we should use Michael Walker as a starting offensive outside linebacker. Like, how many times have we tried to tell you? It's like, we need more production from these players. It's like, the only way to do that is to get them on the field. But at the same time, there's only 11 people you can put there. All right, like, we have expectations for like 12 people, but there's only 11 that you can place. So one of them's got to be left out, and I think the victim has consistently been Michael Walker for whatever reason. Yeah, I mean, we also have New England on that Thursday night game after that. Your defense as a whole has to play better and finish games, Dion and Foye. I mean, they've been fine, obviously. Like they've been making, or they've been stopping a lot of plays so far from getting any worse. Your outside pass rush. I don't know why you keep saying but outside pass rush sucks outside Grady Garrett. That is Jarrett, my dude, and the rookie. Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's always a chance for us to improve, and that's all we've been seeing so far is just nothing but improvements, nothing but, hey, making sure that we are nailing the fundamentals of the game. And once that's the case, then we get a little bit more instinctive. We can start being a little bit more aggressive and start making some more gambles on both sides of the ball. Yep. Okay. Garnier Walker's calling out literally anyone, I guess. Channel K's. How's it going? Says some of these guys need less money until they can tackle. Well, I wouldn't say something like that. I agree. I'd rather see Jacob or John Kaminsky. That is a name. Goodness gracious, where the heck has he been? Rubens needs a tackle. Daquan Graham, yeah. More playing time over Steven Means. All Means does is celebrate at the other plays. Yeah, like, it was funny, like, watching their mic'd up sessions with him. It's like, oh my god, like, everything we've been saying about him isn't true. Yeah, I mean, I guess he's a good person to have in the locker room. Like, that's always been obvious. But ever since Gino got his job over, he's never been the same. Well, yeah, I got nothing to add to that argument. Oh, man. What was that guy's name? Ike Anampali or something? That messed up his career. Like, both of them did, actually. Yeah, man, we ain't got no money, Lieutenant. Okay, so everyone is asking for someone on the defensive line. So regarding the question earlier, so Corey's saying DE or corner. I said pick one, so I'm gonna say defensive end. All right. But also there's that to think about too. You know, what Will's saying right here. We got 1.5 million leave in cap space. There is not a whole lot of moves to be made. So I agree. Millie Mills, y'all think Pitt's gonna get deep? Oh, oops. Against Carolina with their defensive back core. Kyle Pitts is just the ultimate mismatch. All right. When it comes to his hands, you can't really disrupt him because even if you take a hand away, he's still got the other one, and that's just good enough for him. His speed, like he's got the speed of a corner, and then all of us knows about his size, so and his reach. It's going to take a long time before anyone else really comes out and puts a stop to his game. But the one person that I was kind of and he was also a rookie, like the one person that I was thinking, man, like if he stopped Kyle Pitts in college, geez, like, and if he gets into our division, which he did, that was J.C. Horn. Like, we don't have to face him. So, yeah, we should definitely have a field day. Yeah. So it might be a newer version of Shannon Sharp, Kyle Pitts. Yeah, someone also said, Tony Wright said, watching some film from Kellen Winslow Sr. That's also another fantastic comparison to make. He's got the large frame. Like Kellen Winslow Sr. was definitely a little bit bigger in terms of his like frame. He was just a little bit more bulky. That may have been like the jerseys or whatever, or like the old school 70s pads that they had to rock with back then. Because everyone looked like chunky then. Really? Replace Michael Walker and release Dante Fowler. That is the take right there. Okay. It says we got to be chilling out because more playing time. I don't trust Erica Harris. Part of me feels like that wasn't a typo. So it says Brandon Copeland's is doing okay. Yeah, I agree. We should be starting someone over Walker soon. I think he'll be starting. Brew is like, Tony! What are you doing, my man? The heck up with my voice right there. Let's see. By the way, how are you doing? Goodness gracious, my chat list has been really bad. In the past, such as a unit. Well, I can't remember. There's actually been some teams that are worse than us, if you can believe that. Can we get some turnovers? Oh, we absolutely can. Will we? We'll get at least one. I'm gonna give them that. That might come from Jalen Hawkins again. We'll see. It says Avery, from the moment that I heard we signed Eric Harris, I said why. He's done nothing and we don't need him. He did nothing in Las Vegas last year, but left checks. I mean, he's a fantastic story. I mean, I'll say that much. But like, I think we can all agree that not everyone, and I'm even including guys like Devo and AJ Terrell, like not everyone has lived up to their potential on this defense. Like when you add all the puzzle pieces together, they have not lived up to their full potential. All right, so before we start replacing every single person on the team, like we got to assess like how the scheme has looked so far. And is it just because that we're not good enough in order to play it? A part of me agrees with that statement, but a part of me also feels like, hey, give them enough time, and there is going to be that click moment in that defense where, hey, everything is just going to, like, everyone's going to be on the right page. All right, like, we have not seen the best of this defense so far. All right, but hope is on the way. So that's something that we need to keep in mind. Like, we obviously have not seen the best of it, but we have not reached our ceiling yet either. Like, we are only improving our floor. And if our floor is still good enough to win games, as long as Matty Ice is doing his thing, we'll take it right now. I mean, heck, Lemil's a sensation from Notre Dame. I want to see where he goes next year. I haven't taken a whole lot of like scouting from college players. Like, when I do my scouting, I want to make sure that the season is finally like full and done. That way you get like the full resume, because you're just gonna start having a whole lot of like takes and opinions right out the gate, and then they may not necessarily be true come draft time, or like come like the start of the new like free agency period or whatever. Like, we could develop more needs because we might have to let some other people go. So if that's the case, then we might not look at the same players that we did when college games were actually happening, and we might start focusing on like, okay, well, if this contract is going to expire and we can't afford this person, and this person might walk out the door for retirement or whatever, like something is always going to be like, oh, hey, what the heck just happened? There's always going to be that moment in the off season. Just go get T.O. Yeah, I mean, if T.O. wants to sign to anyone, he better. I mean, I've said this before. Like, he might want to. He would want to go to a team that is one receiver away from really transcending a team past their potential. You think the Packers are it? I don't know. I don't know. They're also kind of struggling for. They're also kind of strapping for cash too. Especially like once the start of the new season comes up. Like, I don't think any other wide receivers have a contract that lasts longer than the end of the season. So that's a problem. Tony Rice says, I believe that Calvin Ridley will get deep against Carolina's secondary. Yeah, I mean, if Russell Gage could against Miami, you know, like Miami's struggles, they weren't entirely on the secondary, but we were still able to exploit them and make them look bad. Dirty Birdie, how you going? I traded Tom Brady in Tampa for RB7 for Kamara and Mike Evans. Oh yeah, by the way, in case you're wondering, I am 7-0 in my fantasy league, in the league that gets me money. Jalen Hawkins to start against Carolina and Richie Grant in the slot. So Patrick quarterback. Well, I mean, yeah, Mahomes has been doing fine, but as for the rest of the team, I can't really say that much. It's more like I watched a video about them, and it's more so of like what they're doing with what they have. So, because the Kansas City Chiefs have always been, we're going to rock with Mahomes. Mahomes is going to have either Kelsey or Hill. You need a third receiver. And that's what they've been trying to get. Like, their last attempt at that was Josh Gordon. What the heck happened with that? And the thing about their defense, you know, because they have 3 points and because Mahomes looks so bad, like, people want to instantly blame, like, their offensive line. Their offensive line is fine. Like, the Chiefs' offensive line has been fine. But when we start focusing on, like, the defensive side of the problem, they are playing, like, very simple coverages, and they're not even executing that right because they're constantly miscommunicating. So when you have something like that happens, and then also, by the way, they always run what I like to call a casino blitz, which is a cover zero, which means that all 5 guys are going to be manned up, and everyone else that's not covering someone is going to blitz. Now, that's terrible when you can't get to them. When you have guys like Frank Clark and Chris Jones that are off of injury, and you're still running the same kind of defense. Like, what is going on? They don't have strong they don't have strong people to play man-to-man, and yet they're still trying to do so anyways. And then they can't communicate and get everyone in the right position, and they can't get pressure up front if they want to blitz. And then they want to wonder, oh, hey, man, it seems like Patrick Mahomes is really struggling. Like, we've seen the same narrative before when it came to Matt Ryan. And Alex Walker Playboy says, Matt Ryan getting back to his Hall of Fame career. Honestly, for me, he hasn't really had that much of a drop-off. I mean, if anyone wanted to call him washed up after 2 games, they haven't really seen that he can bounce back from something like that and go for even greater heights. All right, take a look at that 2018 season. Like, that week 1 against Philadelphia, we've heard this before, was awful. But then he went on and had a fantastic season that was just usurped by Mahomes. Ain't nothing you can do about that. Okay, and I also want to mention, while this is still on my mind, so for anyone else that was still saying that Shanahan made Matt Ryan, here's a statistic that I found out. Shanahan's win percentage is about 41% in the 5 years that he's been with the 49ers. You take off the 2019 season when they went to the Super Bowl, he would have the similar winning percentage as Matt Patricia. Kyle Shanahan, if you take off the 2019 season, has a 33% or win percentage. Matt Patricia had a 31. That is bad. And I know what you're saying. Well, they had so many injuries. Well, why do you think that's the case? Because Kyle Shanahan was stubborn. He doesn't want to change. All right? That's why he's not going to Trey Lance. And even when he went to Trey Lance, guess what? They ran him to the ground literally. They couldn't get anything done. And then when Garoppolo was hurt, they inserted Trey Lance when he wasn't ready, then got him hurt. And then when Jimmy Garoppolo came back, because he had to, he looks terrible. But then he's also the type of coach that was like, no, my scheme's going to work. Whereas you put someone else in the same category, like Sean McVay, he's going to adapt. He's going to take a look at the signs of the chain, like the changes that are going on, and be like, well, maybe I need to go with that. The NFL has always been a copycat league, right? So you need to be able to make the changes and adapt to your team and to your system. You can't have the same thing over and over again. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to make his same system from a couple years ago work. And it can't because the league caught up to him. But he's too stubborn and always has to seem like he's the smartest person in the room in order to prevent him from changing. So if they don't get that, like if Kyle Shanahan doesn't change his ways, they're going to have a high draft pick. Oh, wait, never mind. Because they traded a pick away for Lance, in which they might not even be able to see. They are 2-4, and they deserve every single bit of it. That's my rant on Kyle Shanahan, all right? For anyone else that's out there trying to say, like, oh, hey, Kyle Shanahan made Matt Ryan. He's looked awful with literally every other quarterback so far. And any other quarterback that he's worked with in the past, whether it was someone like Brian Hoyer in Cleveland, RG3 in Washington, or Matt Schaub in Houston, they've looked normal when passing in that system. But Matt Ryan took him to a Super Bowl. The defense and that rushing attack took the 2019 49ers to the Super Bowl, and they don't have the same roster anymore. So that's my rant for that. Anyways, let's get back to some of these comments. This is what happens when it's just me. Like, there's not enough people in order for me to deter me back to what everyone else is saying. So they got Gilmore and Henderson. Yeah. There's not a whole lot of like trade bait targets for corners that they could have gotten that was better. So, like, if you're good corners, then you want to be able to keep them, right? So. Oh boy. As Flint was saying up here, jeez, man, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of comments, and my phone wants to skip all the way to the bottom. I like how we're using Kyle Pitts at wide receiver. Sometimes it gets the opponent's defense confused, and they're going to have to be focused on him so we can get other plays open like Hurst or Gage, even Ridley. Yeah, I agree. Like, using him outside, that really helped us a lot because, well, he was just bigger than the corners. Like, even at Miami's best, like, Xavier Harris is only yay high, and Byron Jones is even smaller than that, even though he's got one of the best hops of all time almost. So if that's going to be the case, then, well, Gilmore has got to be able to, like, really learn their defense too, right? Obviously, he's a smart corner. He's also very instinctive. Is he as fast as he once was? I haven't really seen it. Like, can he really, like, physically keep up with a guy as quick and as fast as Calvin Ridley? Like, Matt Ryan has also said in his press conference too, like, even though that there may be, like, a shutdown corner like a Gilmore that he's paid up against, Matt Ryan has always had that belief in his own teammates to the point where, hey, like, I'm going to trust the guy that is on my team in order to get them the ball and that they can make a play, regardless of who that was. So Calvin can get some opportunities still, even if that's the case. Yeah, there goes. Woo. Edison can't cover. No big body receiver. He's still playing in college and two-hand touch. Yeah, I do remember that, like, that one play where he was just, like, kind of clapping, and the receiver just, like, just stayed up and started running for the touchdown. I was like, dude, what are you doing? You got to touch him down. Yes, we are, but we're also going to have to keep a balance. All right, that's what makes the passing so successful, is when we're keeping it balanced, and then we're making our runs look like passes and passes look like runs. All right, so that's why we've seen a couple of, like, throws to Lee Smith, because we want to make sure that we're keeping the defense honest. And then once that's the case, we can just simply play to our strengths, because now we got the defensive psyche to worry about us rather than focusing on their strengths. So it's like there still needs to be the threat of the run, and that's what Arthur Smith is instilling in these players. And that's what Arthur Smith is instilling in this offense too. It's like, even though that we haven't had, like, the best run numbers in terms of, like, a total or, like, a yards per carry, like, hey, when we needed to get the first down, we got the first down using the ground game. Whether it was Mike Davis on a 3rd and 3, where he was being stuffed from the backfield and still fought for the yardage in order to get 5, or whether it was Cordell Patterson late in the game, but the Dolphins knew exactly what we were doing, and they still couldn't stop us. They got a talented defensive line. Didn't matter. They got a defense that knew what we were doing on offense. Didn't matter. Since J.J. Watt, maybe we're just a little bit better. So, yeah, a lot of y'all ripping on Eric Harris. All right, so Damon Simmons, how's it doing? How's it going? Who do you think is the best corner in this year's draft, and who do you think we need to draft Jordan Davis or more outside corner? So I just mentioned, like, I don't do a whole lot of like scouting right now. I want to make sure that the season is finished. Like, I still have like access to tape, but I don't want to look at it until like I get like a full picture of a player, because I don't want to draft someone just off of one game. Trey Lance. Earl's going to lose his job. So here's something I pointed out. So I want y'all to do something, maybe after the stream or maybe right now, and just come back. Right? So look up a picture of Matt Rule, and then look up a picture of Jack Black, and try to change my mind that they're not the same person. So, yeah, fun little assignment for y'all. We don't need to replace everyone on the team, but we do need to play more of our younger guys. Yeah, like we need to get everyone experienced in our defense too. So we shouldn't just abandon people altogether. Like that's not something that the team wants to have happen to them for like a culture change. Like just giving up on a person too early. Now I know, like, hey, aren't you kind of sounding like a little bit of a hypocrite when DJ Green was literally released? Well, when it gets that egregious, and after he's had multiple chances, then I think it would be fair in order to jerk the wheel from him. But like the defensive line plays as a whole. The linebacking core, they play as a whole. The secondary, like the corners, they're kind of more individual. So that's why it was a little bit easier to gauge, like, hey, this person is just not performing that well up to our standards. And the fact that they have those standards in order to be like, oh, well, you had one bad game? That's fine. Come back, see if you can do better. Oh, you did the same thing again? Get out of here. Hope to see you sometime later when you improve, right? Like, that's the mentality of our team right now. Like, we're always looking to get better, even if it means that we literally have to release someone that we've kind of praised before, like in the preseason and like against the Giants. Like, it does not matter. Like, what have you done for me this week? If you costed me the game and made Tua look good, then I'm sorry. Then you can't be on here. Even if it depletes our secondary that's already kind of depleted. Like, that speaks volumes to me right there. The kind of move like that. So, I haven't seen the best of this offense and we're broke. Well, I mean, we're getting closer to the offensive side of the ball. Like, our past 3 games, we've been scoring 30, 27, 30. Like, we're getting points on the board. Like, which is something that we couldn't say the first couple of games. But yeah, I do agree with that. Like, it does take all 3 phases of the game, and we can't forget about special teams. Ogundeji with the block kick. We would have thought that mattered so much, you know? Really? Really? I don't really think you do, man. Oh boy, with this kind of this is a conversation to have. Oh man, we trade Hurst, right? Are you saying Hurst or Hurts? That's to be for O-line, man. Wide receiver or cornerback. So if you're talking about Hayden Hurst, he could be used as a trade bait. But I think what everyone is really stuck up on is making sure that we do get an extra defensive lineman. But guess what? Like, we've already had someone in the works at Georgia that is possible to attain. Now, will we have to give up some draft capital in order to move up to get someone like him? Maybe. But, I mean, we'll see how it goes. In terms of talent, I really love him. You need more stunts on the defensive line and tackle drills. Well, unfortunately, they don't really tackle much in practice. And I'm not talking about like just us as like a joke. I'm talking about like the regulations in an NFL practice. Like they don't really like do a whole lot of they don't do a whole lot of like tackling drills, unfortunately, in their sessions. So obviously it's like kind of to prevent injuries and whatnot, but I mean that is a key, you know? So it's like making sure that you have all the fundamentals of making a tackle. Like obviously like you should have done that before if you're playing on defense. Like you should know what it takes in order to make a tackle. Just keep doing that. Like it sounds so simple. But at the same time, there's all different angles, all different types of levers in order to think about. How do you attack a player if they're kind of running low, or if they're trying to go up high? I mean, there's different variables there, but like you should learn that already by the time you get to an NFL level team. You know? So okay, I am very behind when it comes to these comments. Oh boy. All right, let's see. Okay, yeah, you're 6-1 in your fantasy league. Nice. So on my roster for my fantasy team, I had man, I honestly don't remember because I have two that I'm focusing on, and I don't want to get them mixed up. But I know that Cooper Kupp is on there. So is Cordell Patterson. So is Kyle Pitts. Those are the three constants on both ones. So I'm doing pretty good. Says, is Patty doing entirely too much, and the defense is trash. Whew. Chiefs defense is the Falcons 2019 defense. Or the 2020 defense, which was even worse than that. If you can imagine. I mean, geez, that was painful. Whew. I'm pretty sure every single team is asking that question right now. Okay, these running backs getting hurt. We need to get Gallman and Allison. I don't even think we have Allison anymore. From the practice squad, but man, we have not heard or talked about him in a long time. Let's see. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Man, I am so far behind. Yep. I've been saying that since he was in mint condition on his trip to San Francisco for his first year. I was like, dude, there was nothing about him that made him deserve that big of a contract that fast. You know? Yeah. The funny thing is that he threw the Super Bowl by throwing it. Yeah. Like we've seen the press conference and Tyrann Mathieu said, thank God they didn't keep running the ball. So I just hope that we get anybody on the defense in the trade deadline. Expectations are low. Yeah, I mean you always want to like expect the worst, hope for the best kind of mentality when it comes to these kind of decisions. But yeah, like these off the field like roster moves, they're always just there's not enough knowledge for us to acquire as a general fan. But okay, what's going on? Need to be caught up in y'all's conversations. Yep, exactly. Arthur Smith is a better offensive coordinator than Flash Coach than Kyle. Yeah. Like Kyle got a lot of praise because of what Matt Ryan did for him. So, yeah, like imagine how bad you got to be when all of these other receivers that you played with, they are really fighting for a roster spot once they leave your team. Really makes you wonder. Like if it was just like one or two players, like sure those can kind of be like an anomalies, but when you have like a list of players that you can run off and be like, hey, like this person wasn't the same when they left our team, this person wasn't the same when they left our offense, like, and that can just keep going and going. Like that says something about that quarterback, Like one of the biggest knocks on Matt Ryan was that, oh man, like he was good, but he never elevates the talent around him. I'm like, are you serious? Because all these players that he's been helping with, they are struggling to get jobs elsewhere. Like the only person that that's had like a quasi-successful career outside of this was Austin Hooper. So, and then maybe Devontae, but even then, like he wasn't supposed to be there in Baltimore. Will be our breakout player this year? Well, I think we've already seen it, Cordell Patterson. But if you're trying to ask us for another person to break out, oh boy. Like a lot of us are still clamoring to see Frank Darby play. But I think we're just a little bit too late for that. Like next year, obviously. But right now, excuse me. I'm going to say that more people know about Olamide Zaccheaus. He's been there for whenever we needed him. And although, like, despite his frame and despite what I've said about him in the past, like, yeah, he's made all the catches that we needed him to make. Well, maybe not all of them, but you get the idea. Like, you can trust him more often than not. So, what positions would you draft in the first 3 rounds? So, in terms of priorities right now, like, obviously defensive line. I want us to be a little bit younger there, but also a little bit more powerful there. Like, if we want someone that's just, like, heavy, we already kind of have that in Mike Pennell Jr., who's not a junior in size. But if we want someone with that kind of size and more athleticism, obviously Jordan Davis from Georgia is going to be, like, a treat, especially for a guy like Dean Pease. Like, that's going to keep him on this defense for a couple more years. Having a talent like that on like all 3 phases of the game like this, like that's what makes guys like Dean Pease want to keep going back to the game. Like if you thought that Dean Pease was just going to come back out of retirement a second time just to work on a rebuilding defense, I think he's starting to sell you that you're sorely mistaken if that's the case. So, with someone like that on the horizon, that'll be a key feature. Obviously, we'll see how the free agency goes for us. We'll see what other free agents, what other kind of like restricted and unrestricted free agents show up, what other kind of trades happen in terms of like the draft stock, but also what value you can add for your players to equal a contract or to equal a draft spot, to save up money that way. But if we're going at the pool of talent, so it's like if I want to draft someone like Jordan Davis, I don't know when he would be available, like in the draft like selection. Like, is he a top 10 pick? I don't know. That's not to like say that he can't be, but just in terms of like what other teams value, what the draft values, like what else, like there's a lot of variables there. So when it comes to like his importance, obviously his position doesn't really help. Even a guy like Aaron Donald was drafted like 14th or something. So you look at the pecking order of players, like there's always going to be a lot of quarterbacks or whatever taken high, a lot of skill positions, and then you kind of get into the trenches. And then you go back to more so the trenches in the second half, or like the second round for those teams that got a skill position. Like, for example, the Bengals, they drafted Jamar Chase, and then in the second round they drafted Jackson Carman. Both of them are doing fantastic right now. So there's that to keep in mind, you know? So it's like when you get a skill position like that, you can go back in the trenches and get someone else like that, which is what we've kind of done, but we've also kind of gotten some duds there too. Not in this draft class, because I still have hope for everyone in this draft class, and I mean everyone, even guys like Avery Williams and Drew Dahlman. Like, there is still like a spot for them to be here on the roster in the future. So I'm good with that. When the draft was going on last year, or a couple months ago, like April or whatever, I was pounding on the table for us to get a running back in the 6th round, and the running back that was there in the 6th round was Khalil Herbert. Look what happened, man. He was a great running back. So, like, if Cody Walker's still here, like, he made you nervous a little bit if that offense was competent in literally any other way. Like, I'm pretty sure he was the only rusher that was – I think he was the only running back that you allowed over 100 yards with. And he got like 170 or something. So that speaks volumes to how good that he was. You know? So it's like, if you get another running back in the room, and I know what you're saying, well, it's like, well, we already have like Cordell Patterson and Mike Davis. Well, Mike Davis hasn't done a whole lot. And Cordell Patterson, yeah, he's been fantastic, but he does too much for us. And he's 30, so I don't want to wear him out too much. So having another guy on the right there, that'll do a lot of wonder. So if there's a guy, like if there's a running back in the 2nd round, I'd really like to see us get that right there, get that covered up. And then I think the 3rd spot, let's see, for the 3rd round, I'm thinking either corner or a tight end. Because at the end of the season, we can probably kiss Hayden Hurst goodbye. But at the same time, it's like, you can't go wrong with so many corners, you know? I mean, we'll see. Like, we've been kind of doing all right without having to target him so many times. It's not like he's been like the main focal point of an offense. But that doesn't mean that he can't be. So I want to see like someone like replace his spot there. It obviously can't be like Lee Smith, but also like guys like Jaden Graham's, like a guy like Jaden Graham can come back and be that Hayden Hurst type too. So it's also pretty difficult to think about. Like, how much do you want to trust a guy that you haven't seen at all? And versus like how much do you want to invest in a position such as another corner for like the umpteenth time? So that's kind of where my mind is at right now. If you want to go in like another offensive lineman just to give us some more depth there, that'd be also fine. But, you know, depending on the scheme, like you can also kind of get someone later in the rounds. It's not like those are the only three draft picks that we have. Oh, prove it. I am very glad that you asked that. So for anyone else that was wondering, I used to have like these like calendar wallpapers that was behind me. They were like really flopping in the wind because of the fan that I have right here. And I decided to replace it because, hey, if I'm going to be on camera, and I'm going to be here on a weekly basis, I don't want something as flimsy as that behind me to distract people. So if I'm going to distract them, I want to do it in a good way. So these two posters are from the same video game, and this is probably one of not just one of my favorite games. It's probably my favorite game of all time, and it's probably one of the best games ever created, and that is Outer Wilds. So, not sponsored, but Mobius, please. Just kidding, but yeah, I want to be able to talk about this game. Obviously, this isn't that type of channel. Like, I don't have my own channel because I'm not about that, but I want to be able to talk about this game. But the beauty of this kind of game is when you don't talk about it, because the best way to experience this game, it's more of an experience than anything else, but it's a blind experience. It's not knowing what the game is truly about, because that is where you get all of the joy out of that. So, yeah, if I explain it, I can't really explain it. That's why, because these are kind of spoilers to it. Not big spoilers, but they're spoilers nonetheless. But glad someone pointed it out finally. I didn't know when to naturally have the talk oh hey in case no one's wondering. Hey, finally someone is. NYC young boy, how's it going? Should I trade Keenan Allen for Mike Williams in the second round of the Dynasty League? Well, we're really going back to this. We're going back to the old format, just like good old times, aren't we? Let's see. Keenan Allen for Mike Williams. That is tough, but I would say hold off on that, because as much praise as I've tried to give Mike Williams in the past, he's a little bit too inconsistent in terms of the targets that he gets. Herbert or A-Rod, who to start? Well, J.J. Watt's been shut down again for the Cardinals, but that defense has been on a tear. Herbert did not look that good against the Baltimore Ravens, but they got a bye week and they were able to bounce back against who again? Honestly, Herbert is probably a little bit of a better option right now. But moving on, one thing I could say is that we get better every week. That's what I've been saying too. Williams hasn't been the same. Has 3 catches, 39 yards the last game. People still miss that. Whew. And they wanted to say that Ryan Tannehill was better. Ryan Tannehill has made Julio Jones an afterthought. You just hate to see it, Mike Davis needs different running plays. It seems like instead of running the ball, he wants to hit the defense. Well, I mean, that's kind of been his job so far, honestly. It's to just kind of wear them out so that when Cordell Patterson gets the ball, they're a little bit banged up, and then they can you can get a little bit more shifty. Yeah, so prove it. If you haven't seen that yet, there's that up there. Yeah. That's another good point, too. Mike Davis is really good in pass protection. I don't know if anyone else has been as productive as Javonte Williams of the Broncos, because that dude just loves to hit. But yeah, if you can get a running back that is good in pass protection, that is also a valuable trait too. So every position is going to have that non-stat, tangible or intangible thing that they can provide a team. That's kind of it for Mike Davis too, on top of his running ability in crucial situations. Well, I mean, we would say that, but at the same time, Hayden Hurst is also a Dan Quinn guy. Calvin Ridley was a Dan Quinn guy. I don't want to like rely on like the previous regime and be like, oh well, obviously everything that they brought in sucked, because that's not true. Not everyone. has been a big percentage, but it hasn't been everyone. Overpaid decoy. You want to talk about overpaid decoy? Look at Jimmy Graham's contract on the Bears. So, all right. Finally caught up to everyone in the chat. Goodness gracious. Now I can get on to the second question that Daivon sent me. Who, after an hour and 15 minutes later. I mean, his other two questions, they were a little bit more simpler. So his second question that he asked me was, has Cordell Patterson taken over the running back duties? My answer is not completely. I mean, we've already said this before. Like, Cordell does so much for our team, and for him to kind of take over a position like full time, that's not where he's at his best. Where he's at his best is where he's unpredictable. If we force a team to consider him as a running back or as a wide receiver only, that's when we lose like the best part. That's when we lose the best part about him. So, as much as I want to say that he can take over, like honestly, like if you find a way to go to simulation and turn off the injuries, oh, absolutely, turn off the fatigue as well. But I don't want to run him to the ground, and other people have said it before too. Many, many times. Like, he is a hot commodity. He is a hot demand. But at the same time, we need to keep the supply balanced. Yeah. Oh boy. I wannabe Saints fan. Just to smack him in the face. Oh man. All right. And his third question for me was, who has the most consistent offense in the NFL on a week-to-week basis? So I kind of wanted to answer this a little bit in two different ways. So obviously, if you just want to look at statistics, I mean, the Bucs are up there, but who's actually scored more points is the Cardinals. So, but I've also kind of mentioned on a play-by-play basis, it's the Cowboys. So there's different measures to use for that kind of thing. Like, if you want to look at who has been the best, like, passing team, well, that's been Tampa Bay and in Kansas City in terms of getting the more first downs. If you want to talk about running team, well, that has actually been Cleveland over Tennessee. I know, it's crazy to think about. But the Browns have more rushing yards, a better yards per attempt, and the same amount of touchdowns as the Titans in terms of rushing. So, like, that's pretty good right there too. Buffalo also has been up there. I'm on the upper echelon. Prove it to the Cardinals, and I agree with him. I think that on a week-to-week basis, you start to see like nothing but constant production from them. They've made the bad teams look bad. Heck, they made the good teams look bad. So that's why I'm going to give the award right there to the Cardinals. But the second way that I wanted to answer this question is if we just kind of go by a position, because that's like the team. That's the basic like team functionality. But if I want to give a couple people some shout outs, I know we haven't completed the season yet. I'll be the first one to say that. Like we still have like 10 more games to go. Around there, I want to say. Hopefully we have more. But there's a couple of other players I wanted to shout out by position. And the first one was, if you remember way back then, the good old times before week 1 even happened, I mentioned that Derek Carr was going to be one of the top quarterbacks in the league. So I've been writing that so far. I mean, he was 31 for 34 with a 91.9 completion percentage. And what I started to know from watching him is that he has changed the way that he's thrown the deep ball. That's what's been the crucial part. Like, sure, he's been efficient, you know. They've always found a way to, quote unquote, make the easy completions. But he's also done a favor for those receivers by making the ball easier to catch. So what you've noticed in the past is, if you looked at Derek Carr, you'd start to see that he likes to throw those long, those just flat line drives that were just bullets down the field. Those are hard to catch. I don't care who you are. But you start to see now when he's throwing those Russell Wilson, Matt Ryan kind of moon balls, and yes, I put Matt Ryan in that conversation because even though he doesn't have the arm talent like a Stafford or like a Josh Allen or like a Mahomes, he doesn't need to if he just puts enough air under it for the receiver to run underneath it. And that's why all those Kyle Pitts and Russell Gage completions, they look so good, because he knows where to throw the ball and knows how to arc it so that only the receiver can catch it. So when you start to see a little bit more of an arc to it, that's when you get guys like Foster Moreau to just light up the scoreboard when you don't have Darren Waller with you. So that was one of the key things that I saw from him as to why like he's been so good. If I want to go by running back, one of the more consistent running backs in the league, like it's obviously easy to say Derrick Henry, right? But the guy that I want to shout out is Jonathan Taylor. For all the expectations that we've had on him, like for all those people that drafted him like the first 2 rounds in the fantasy, like they were already kind of worried about like his production. Like, hey, is he going to be like this offense? Is he going to be like the saving grace of this team in order for me to trust him on a week-to-week basis? And I think he's answered the call. So when thinking of it in that way, he's really impressed me. And that's what makes him like he's second in rushing right now. And you better believe that he doesn't have as nearly the amount of carries as a Derrick Henry, who's on pace for like 600 or whatever, which is just insane. As a wide receiver, how can you not say Cooper Kupp? I mean, I can mention 2, and then obviously like Jamar Chase will be the second one. But Cooper Kupp, did you guys know that he was 6'2", 210? I always thought he was smaller than that. Maybe that was just me. But I thought he was like 5'11" or something. He did not look like he played up to that kind of height. But now, he's not being held back by someone like Jared Goff anymore. You know, and I say that because there's been plays where Jared Goff has not had the success rate of making those completions on certain routes that Stafford can. All right, because some of those are more tight window throws. Some of those are more like, hey, you need to zip the ball in there. Jared Goff just simply couldn't do it, which isn't a fault of them. It was more so like, hey, like these two, like, hey, this system and this quarterback just simply wasn't good enough of a match. But, yeah, I got Cooper Kupp on my fantasy team. He has been giving me nothing but W so far. Yeah, he's been someone that I want to shout out. Jamar Chase as well. For everyone that has been harping on him in the preseason, I was kind of one of them. I'm not going to lie. But I will easily take my apology back and be like, hey, you go, and hopefully you do just enough to get second place so that Kyle Pitts can get first place on the Rookie of the Year candidate list. Anyways, as far as the offensive line as a whole, I'm gonna go with the Browns. You know, like I said, they have still kind of offered quite a number of sacks, but their running offense has been phenomenal, like I've mentioned before. You know, it depends on what you specialize in. If you want to specialize in running the ball, get an offensive line like the Browns. If you want to focus on passing the ball more, don't mean to be a homer, but since week 4, we've only allowed 2 sacks. For how terrible this offensive line has been, that has been a league low since week 4, by the way. Just thought I'd give you all the tip of my hat, man, in respect, because that is not an easy achievement, especially with the defensive lines that we've been facing, and even the defensive lines that we have yet to face. So that's going to be quite the accomplishment there. So those are just going to be a couple of players / positions that I wanted to shout out so far. Are they going to keep these? Are they going to keep this up and wait and then get these awards elsewhere? Time will tell. Obviously, if you want to keep continuing to shout out some more players, that's one thing. But that's not what I was asked to do. So while we still have some people here, here was a question. Here were some questions that I was going to ask Daivon, but maybe you guys can help me with this since y'all were so active so far. So let me know if y'all are ready in order for me to ask this first question. And it goes, why is the quarterback sneak still a play? I've been wanting to know that for so long. Like, and it keeps getting used in crucial parts of the game too. Like, that is just, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. It doesn't matter who the offensive line is. It doesn't matter who your opponent is. I've never liked that call. I've never liked, like, on a 4th and 1, a 3rd and 1, they just quarterback sneak it. Why do you have all these plays in your playbook on offense that get you at least a yard, and you resort to go call a play that gets you at most 2 yards? I've never understood that kind of philosophy. I don't know if this seems more of like a rhetorical question to y'all. So my question to follow that up with the rhetorical question not being the case anymore, like, what is the type of play that I would want to see replaced with it? Like, what is another, like, surefire play that can get you at least a yard instead of at most a yard? You know, like, do you want to go with a run? Do you want to go with a pass? Obviously, we've seen the repercussions if you pass on a short yardage situation in crucial moments of the game. Seattle. But, you know, it's about the matchups of, obviously. It's about the weapons that you have, obviously. So why not make it about that? You know, like, why are you still relying on a non-mobile quarterback more often than not in order to run into a pile to get you a first down or run into a pile to get in the end zone? Like, you're going back to, like, the old, like, 1800s style of football where it's just a rugby scrum. Like, why is this play still a thing? I don't know. Maybe that's just my frustrations about that kind of play, because I've seen other teams, like, lose to it, like the Bills. And it just baffled me that this play still is relevant in 2021. James Chang, Broncos at Washington. As far as, like, a defense on fantasy? Neither. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know if the chat has been, like, I don't know if on my end if it's, like, not updating or what, or if it's, like, so much of a latency. I don't know. Well, anyways, I'll leave that up in the air for at least Daivon to listen back to. My second question was, what does a wasted career mean to you? I've seen that term coined a lot about, ah man, well this player was so good, but his career was wasted because he was on this team. So it's like I want to know, like I want to see if we can get like a general understand, like a common ground understanding of what that term means, and if we're using it in the right context. Because in my opinion, I've always thought that a wasted career was that like they were a player on a team that just never utilized them correctly. So an example of this may be Drew Lock. But an example that I was kind of thinking about was, I mean, kind of going back to the 49ers, was Trey Sermon, the running back. He is not getting any snaps. He's not getting any carries on that offense for them. And they've had so many running back issues. You've drafted him. He did well in college. So much so where people thought he was a top 5 running back in that draft class. And you put him on a team that runs a lot and you don't use him at all. Make it make sense, Kyle Shanahan. But I mean, there has been other players too that if you don't think that counts, then I want to see a little bit more examples then. Help me out then. Let's throw some names out there and see if we can agree. Because you mentioned Drew Lock, and I semi-agree with you on that. Like does a young career count then? If a young career doesn't count, then your answer doesn't count with Drew Lock. So if we're going like a certain amount of years past until we start to deem that trait and be like, hey, like, oh man, like they wasted his career. Like Allen Robinson, I think his talents have been dearly missed. Trevor Siemian. Are you just naming Broncos quarterbacks? I'll give you one, Paxton Lynch. Hayden Hughes says John Kaminsky getting the Dejan Sanat treatment right now. What are your thoughts on that situation? Well, yeah, Millie Mill says John Kaminsky. Practice means a lot to Dean Pease. If you aren't showing up there, then maybe that's one of the reasons as to why. Yeah, I'm starting to think that maybe our chat is a little bit slow in terms of its latency. That's what I'm starting to notice. Maybe it's on my end, or maybe I don't know. But yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of good talent there to be had on our defensive line. If I can run a name of like 5 people and be like, well, there's Grady Jarrett, there's Marlon Davidson, there's Taquan Graham, there's Jonathan Bullard, then you want to say John Kaminsky is the 5th option? It's like, well, there's also Mike Pennell. They run different schemes. They're a part of different personnel packages too. So it's hard for me to really decide whether or not it's more of a talent issue or whether it's just we just can't figure out like what to do with him on the field, or maybe he just hasn't been showing up in practice. There's been a couple of variables for that. That kind of situation seems a little bit more controlled to me. So, is there anyone else that you guys can think of as far as like a wasted career? Like, it doesn't have to be just for Atlanta. Mike Williams from USC. Like, which one? There's always been a Mike Williams in the NFL. Are you referring to like the Bucs wide receiver, Mike Williams? I want to say that you are. Yeah, I think like the entire state of Georgia is collectively down for Jordan Davis to be on the Falcons. Lions wide receiver? Are you referring to Rory Williams? There's been a ton of those too. Well, it's the Cowboys safety, those Rory Williams. That McKinley and Vic Beasley wasted their own careers. Yeah, I mean there is a deciding factor too. Like, at what point do you start to realize, like, hey, we didn't waste this guy's career. They're just not that good. I'm starting to think that Sam Darnold might lie in that category. Am I a little bit too? Am I too early to say that? I don't think so. He's had the same amount of time as a guy like Josh Allen. Heck, Josh Rosen even impressed us. Time for a new quarterback. Are you referring to us? The stats say otherwise, man. Not Lions, you meant Jacksonville. Mike Williams, receiver on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Again. I'm gonna feel stupid if if a Mike Williams is still on the Jaguars right now. Billy Mills, can you help me out? Like, what year did they play for? Any starting quarterback for Chicago? Well, I don't know why the NFL, if you follow their Instagram, I don't know why they were hyping up Kyle Orton recently. I mean, so what? Like, we should be losing then? Is that your concern? We're not doing enough losing. Is that Matt Ryan's fault as to why we're winning? Mike Williams, he played with Reggie Bush at USC. Okay, so mid-2000s then. Oh. Man. I think, yeah, I'm starting to remember him. Oh, boy. Talk about a waste of career. I don't even remember. But when I was thinking about this question in my head, I was like, man, there isn't a ton of examples that are coming up right away that I can feel like, well, for different, like Josh Gordon and Justin Blackmon, for example, like those guys, they kind of wasted their careers. But it wasn't for the same reason as to the other ones. You know, like they self-destructed off the field. Aldon Smith and, you know, like Greg Hardy or whatever, like Ray Rice, they didn't do that much. Oh boy. Talk about someone that gets mad when we win. Man. So where was the interception in the end zone last game against Miami? And if he's not accurate, then there's no way for Kyle Pitts and Russell Gage and Calvin Ridley to get the ball. They're not accurate. They're not accurate throws. You know, he's not throwing to Inspector Gadget and Ezra Scissorhands. Okay, but if he always throws it, then there should be an example more recently, right? So where was the example for last game? What was the example against the Jets? You don't leave the receivers out. Did you not see the throws made to Gage? Made to Pitts? Where the receivers were in front of the defensive backs? Okay, anyways, here's another one. Trubisky. I think we're starting to see that may be the case. Because he hasn't really been, like, obviously he wasn't really like the solution, but he wasn't the problem over there in Chicago. That front office as a whole has kind of been that problem there. So now he's over in Buffalo. I think that, I mean, he said it himself already that he's now with a community that respects him for the kind of player that he can be rather than the player that he's been in the past. Keyword right there. We won. So, hey, you said it yourself, not me. All right. The last question that I had was, what would be your way of fixing the consistency issues for the Falcons? Because obviously we want to have we've always said that we want to have a fast start. I don't think there's ever been a coach that didn't want to say that. But something's got to give when it comes to these certain plays. We've been one of the best offenses when it comes to third downs, when it comes to converting those third downs. I think we've been like top 5. And so it's like that's not the case. Our red zone issues has been fixed. But I think that we're still trying to. I think it's still because like we're running on first down a little bit more often than we pass, or it's the other way around. Like there was not enough of a balance there. So this question is kind of completely up to you, like however you want to interpret it. You know, whether it's a consistency issue on the defensive side of the ball or whether it's a consistency issue on the offensive side of the ball that you want to target. You know, I'm kind of thinking offense first, defense second. But obviously, if your brain wants to think defense first, offense second, that's the same. It goes as well for you. So, okay. Oh, boy, you were salty, and I don't know why. Couldn't win a playoff game, huh? Then how did it get to the Super Bowl? So, yeah, there's a response from Jay Murphy. Exactly. There's a response from Brandon. But yeah, I mean, if you want to think about the consistency issues, I think that the discipline on offense, as far as like the penalties, those have kind of been scaled back. Like we haven't seen a whole lot of problems there, but who's to say that that kind of change once we get back to our own spot? Because we know how fantastic the referees have been in our spot. As far as the defense, there's a little bit more to be said about there. But I think it's more of a mental situation with them. So obviously it's like, I mean, you want to prepare the same way that you can every week. You know? Chatting about Sauce Gardner corner from Cincinnati, then Jordan Davis in the second, then Tyler you're running back from BYU, maybe the third. Yeah, there we go. How long it took. Okay, well, so name all these other rookie quarterbacks that have been winning playoff games. What was the last rookie quarterback to win a playoff game? I'm going to wait for your response to that. All right, because if you want those results to be immediate, then someone's got to give about the rest of the team, you know? He's been to the playoffs 6 times. That should be evident. All right. 6 out of 14. Obviously, not every year has been the same as far as like who we've been up against. Moving on. Okay. It's like, as far as anything else, like, how do y'all feel about our special teams? I mean, that doesn't get much talked about, but it's not just like the kicking, right? Obviously, we've seen improvements from that. Like, when was the last time we worried about a puncher? You know, like remember that was such a big thing. Our kicker has literally been 100%, so that's good. Like as far as like field position and getting points off the board like that, that has been crucial for us, and that has been something that we can really count on. You know, whether it was like in the second quarter or where was there at the end of the game in order to win it. So about the other side of the ball, like in the punt return game and the kick return game, like because there's always going to be an extra variable that the Panthers may need to use against us in order to have an advantage. Yeah, I mean, on it, like I haven't really seen. Let's see. They've kind of been like mixing him in and out of the lineup. Like obviously he's got the onside kick specialty to him, but I think they want to like kind of preserve him every now and then from kicking, just because he actually like wants to try to tackle, which I love to see that from a kicker. But at the same time, he's the only one that we have. You know, Avery Williams. You know, he's actually been someone to talk about as far as a returner. You know, and I do like that they're not afraid to take a return out. You know, but there's also some of these rules that Marquise Williams has taught them. It's like, oh hey, like if it's past the 10-yard line, if it's going to bounce on the punt, obviously don't touch it. You know, we're going to take the chance that it rolls out and gets a touchback. But obviously, like Millie Mills, that was because he had to improve in order to get to this spot to where he's at now. Like he wasn't that good. Like he wasn't as good as he is now as he was for them back then. So that's why they let him go, is because all it takes is a couple of bad kicks in order for a kicker's career to be over. And then for whatever reason, there's always one or two that lingers around too much. And then, hey, you might see a resurgence from them. Right. You know, it's like we're starting to get plays there. I want to see a block punt next time. I certainly think that the Panthers are going to give us plenty of opportunities to do that against them. And yeah, I mean Avery Williams, I watched him on tape in college as a corner first and then as a return guy later. So, you know, and when he was there at Boise State, like he was playing the outside. You know, for as small as he was still playing outside zone and still playing like the outside man-to-man too. You know, and he did well enough for me. That's why he did well enough for Terry Fontenot as well, in order to give him a chance in the 5th round. So as far as like, there obviously is a hole there, but when you would try to explain what the hole is, it's really tough to describe it. Because like, yeah, you can see it, right? Like you can see it on the field. Like there's a problem there. but there's a solution that I don't know all the answers to because I'm just an outside observer, you know. Darren Hall hasn't played much defense. I think he can still be a corner. You know, I think our depth at safety has been fine. Obviously, y'all were ripping on Eric Harris, but Deron Harmon has played fine. Richie Grant can improve. Jalen Hawkins, you know, I nicknamed him Ball Hawkins. So, I mean, if there is a position that I would want to see him play, it would be corner instead of safety. And then with Sheffield, whew, I don't even know if Dean Pease is asking that question. I mean, like, he hasn't been hurt in order to practice with Dean Pease. So it's like all he's done is just learn head knowledge from the playbook, I'm assuming. And then as far as like on the field, like where we can place him at the best, like my mind's thinking slot, because you know I've said this before a couple weeks ago. Like in order to help out the corner, you want to put that guy in the slot where he's got protection from like different sides of the field in your coverages. You know, and then that's why I said Fabian Moreau could play a slot corner because he did that in Washington, and we can give him some of the help that he needs. But now he's kind of proven himself to be that number 2 corner now. You know, I saw him like deflecting a pass from Mike Gesicki on a 3rd down. Like that was crucial. And we're seeing more and more plays from him, you know, snuffing up screen passes and doing more stuff that you don't typically notice. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that too. You know, like I said, like there's never a bad thing to have too many corners on your team. So as far as your roster's build up, like how many do you want to invest in? Because they're all going to be young. You know, I kind of want a more of a veteran presence there. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to be gone after this year, right? Check. I'm going to try to check like his contract status with us. So while I'm doing that, let's see. All right. You know, I'm going to give you something to do if you're watching. Educate me on the Braves. That'll give you something for me to learn from as I'm looking this up. Okay. This offseason is going to heavily lean on what we do with Matt Ryan's contract. That's true because we are spending a decent amount on that. Let's see. Fabian Moreau. Oh. Okay, so he is on a 1-year deal. Did not know that. I guess I'm not going to learn anything from the Braves. I was in a single comment in the chat. Yeah, I mean, you would think that's a high number, right? But the quarterback contracts, they are only going to get higher. All right? As much as high of a number as you think that it is. Like, Dak Prescott's making like 45. Patrick Mahomes is making 45. Deshaun Watson at one point was on pace to make him about 45. Like, the money is going to go to the quarterback position just for their reputation alone. You know, you pair that up with some of the other contracts that you're still kind of paying off, like $15 million for Julio, some of the other ones for like James Carpenter and Desmond Trufant and all these other guys that we can name that we've already done so before. That is just way too long of a list. But I mean, as far as our talent is concerned, like in comparison to what we can spend on, I still think that we have a good enough balance in order to stay competitive with all of our matchups. You know? Desmond Truman. Trufant. But yeah. I wasn't expecting this to be as long of a show, honestly. So I really appreciate every single one of you that has tuned in for this long, you know. That was like the only reason as to why I stayed this long as long as I did. I was only expecting this to be on here for like 45 minutes. But we kind of hit our 2-hour mark as we normally did in the past. So I'm checking, and I'm going to check continually to see if Daivon's subscribe count is going to go up. Because if you missed him this week, he's got his own YouTube channel. If you want to talk to me, this is the time to do it, you know. Occasionally Fridays, and I'm kind of on the chat if I can. More so as an interaction with all y'all. But this is the only way to reach me, because, as I've said this before, I want this to be about what I say rather than who I am. That's just me. Like, if you want to support everyone else, that's fine. Go ahead and do that. You know, they have their own reasons to why they created the channels. You know, they have something else to provide. For me, I want to thank Brandon Kahuna and everyone else that stuck around for this long, because this is the only spot to get me. All right, I'm seeing a little bit more and more of people on Instagram that are trying to reach out to me. I'm like, no. I'm sorry, man, but that's not who I do this for. I don't like that is separate from what I do here, you know. And I want to leave, and I want to kind of let that be. Plus, you're not missing much. I'm not much of a poster. These are posters. I'm not a poster, but yeah, I need to find out. I need to find out an outro to do. So, yeah, when's the next Brave game? Over here. I'm gonna try to get up to the 2-hour mark. For those of you that are still with me, when's the next Brave game? Who needs Google when you have friendship, right? Who's going to do it first? Me or Google? Man. You were so close. Like, we were almost... Oh, jeez. Oh, Sirius is tied 1-1 right now. But yeah, you are right. Friday at 8:09. Wearing red. Nice to know that. Might be wearing red to work tomorrow. As I'm wearing red to work right now. All right. Well, that's going to be it for me. I'm going to do some more research, because as much as I want to support y'all in baseball, I just don't know the team all that well, because I'm over here in California. And I'm not like really entitled to any particular team there or basketball. So I'm gonna ride with y'all. You know, you can call me bandwagon. That's completely fair. But hey, I appreciate what the Falcons do, and if y'all want to ride off of the vibe that you get from other teams, and hopefully that wears that kind of rubs off on the Falcons, I am all for it. You know, the Hawks are doing well, the Braves are doing well, Atlanta United is doing well, and guess what? They all struggled at first. Every single one of them. Even I know that. All right. We're kind of struggling too. So hopefully we can keep this streak up. All right. All right, guys. Appreciate you. See you next week.